Sometimes realize there's no way.
You have tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with me, your host, Diva with Depression. Hi, guys. How's it going? I hope everybody is doing well. We have so much madness going on in the world. I know that it's hard to, focus sometimes, even though we haven't immersed ourselves into the political forum and that whole sideshow. We still know that we will be affected and it's still stressful. And then you have a trial going on, and that's triggering and upsetting for some people. Well, it's upsetting for everyone, but there are some people that it will be triggered, such as me. So I haven't been watching it and like barely reading about what's going on. And if you are one of those people that is being triggered in the discussion about the trial and everything is bringing up emotions, then you need to speak to someone. Don't just hold it in, and because it's dangerous and he's not worth it. So, if the trial talk is upsetting you and triggering you into an episode, please, please, please talk to someone and get some help. Turn off the TV, turn off the radio. What else? Social media. I don't know how people say turn off social media because that's really how we get most of our information. But anyway, I digress. Just maybe unfollow if you're on Instagram. If you unfollow the gossip rags, then that'll cut down some of the triggers. So, guys, today, the other day, something happened to me, and it just came out of nowhere. These feelings that came out of nowhere. And I've shared before that I've had experiences growing up that were harmful and contributed to where I'm at today mentally. And I don't think that I know for the first couple of years of therapy after I had my breakdown, all of the doctors were just trying to go through what was happening at that current time, because everybody has problems with their mom, everybody has problems with their dad. How much of that is part of this? And it wasn't until actually my last therapist that we started addressing the trauma that I have experienced. And there are some things that I remember, and there are some things that I don't remember. But we try to start addressing that. And so I, of course, found the term. I had it saved on my Pinterest, excuse me, because I knew that I wanted to make this an episode one day. And so what it's called is adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences. And it's called ACE. They say ACE. But what ACE is, any traumatic event that you have suffered prior to 18 years old. So see, from zero, actually the CDC has 0 to 17, 18. Okay, so for when people tell you, oh, well, you were 3, you didn't remember that, you were 2. Yes, we remember. We remember. And so it's what you may have experienced prior to your 18th birthday, or and that doesn't say, even if even though the term ends at 18, we know for a fact that we carry it for a lifetime. So, and it could different things contribute to it. Who are we? I always tell people, who are we to tell someone what their trauma is? Like somebody will say, "Oh my gosh, such and such, that was so dramatic. That was so traumatic for me." That's not real trauma. You don't have the right to tell anybody what their trauma is and what they're carrying. So one of the first realm or contributor to ACE is the household, where all my excitement took place. And so with the household, you have, if your parents live with mental illness, alcoholism, divorce, homelessness, domestic violence, sexual abuse. These are the type of events that they have under the household realm. And we all know that the Black people are good at what goes on behind these doors, stays behind these doors, right? And so many of us, millions of us actually just stuff it and stay quiet. But you have to somehow try to get it out. Because if you grew up and you watched, you know, your parent being beaten or homelessness, that's major, that that's a big thing. Alcoholism, I grew up around that. Drug abuse, I grew up around that, you know, and emotional abuse, which I've done an episode about it, but I'm going to do it again because people really don't think that emotional abuse counts, but it does. And, or if you were neglected by your parents, neglected by the people around you, it's those type of things. So the next one is community, which sort of caught me off guard because I'm like, community. And so that just means that what's going on, your environment. And these are the types of events that would occur in the community realm. So you have poverty, violence, you have lack of jobs, in lower income neighborhoods. You're dealing with discrimination, poor schools, um, poverty, bad air quality. They have air quality down here, guys, but that's important, right? I wouldn't have thought to say that. But like I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn, which is well, it was one of the um neighborhoods that was ignored mostly by the government and anybody else. And so it really starts to like I got up. I've seen dead bodies as I'm walking to school. I've experienced the drug abuse and the alcoholism within my family and without my family. And discrimination, of course, is everywhere we go, you know. And that's why I always say that Black people, every Black person that's alive has trauma, PTSD, because discrimination, it's angering, it's frustrating. But when you're growing up from 0 to 17, and this is what you have to contend with, that will contribute to you having a traumatic reaction. So, lack of jobs, lack of money, and mobility. Like if you're living somewhere like where I'm at now, if you don't have a car, it's hard to get around, But what if you can't afford a car? It's expensive, especially nowadays, because everything is just ridiculous nowadays. But I wanted to say again, the water, they have water and air quality down here. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because that's something that we're all entitled to, clean air and clean water. And we don't get it. And so, but if you don't have clean air, then that can trigger allergies, that can trigger um, asthma, all sorts of things. Water can contribute, have lead in it, lead poisoning. And so these are really important things that occur that will really affect us. So pay attention to that. The next one is your environment. And of course, I thought environment was what I just said, the community, but the CDC has something different. And one of the main things that stood out was a natural disaster. If you've experienced a natural disaster between 0 and 17, and I was I stopped and I said, well, Katrina could be an example. And the people of Louisiana, that they'll never ever forget that. I mean, that was devastating. And it was even devastating for us watching it, like I'll never forget some of those images. And so, but the babies that experienced it firsthand, if they are going to have that trauma built up in them, they're going to have traumatic reactions. They're going to have triggers for the rest of their lives, maybe because of this. Hurricane Sandy. I was in New Jersey when Sandy um, hit. I didn't have lights for like 7 days, 6 or 7 days. We couldn't, no food. We had to keep our food outside in the cooler. And it was cold. It was winter. So I had just moved to New Jersey. So we didn't have everything unpacked yet. And so, and thank goodness my kids were older at that time. But these are things that last, you know. We could have been one of the homes that was destroyed by Sandy. And then you have to start the process of recouping, recovering. But just because you recover does not mean that it doesn't linger with you. And the trauma doesn't count. Uh, Mudslides, storms, fires. Uh, we had a fire when we were younger, and I wasn't there. So I was not there for the fire, but I lost my kitty cat. And um, I'm never going to forget that. I can even tell you where he's buried. But you see what I'm saying? These are things that, if you're talking to somebody, say to my brother, and he may not even remember that about the cat, or, it may not sit with him, but it sits with me because I'm a different person and different people are going to handle it different. No less that I already have the mental illness, and I also I always have something traumatic going on, and my brain is always going. And so let me say this again. What is traumatic to you is your business. Never let anyone brush you off, because these are huge events here. And if you struggled with just one, that can last you forever. There may be domestic abuse in your house, and that was what you saw all the time. And even when they separated or they got divorced, that still didn't stop the fighting and the back and forth. And now you have to split your time between two houses, and so it's a lot on a child. And you don't forget that. You don't forget that. You especially don't forget how your parents handled it. So never let anyone tell you that you're not valid, your trauma is not valid. And so the CDC said that there's 64% of adults have at least one ACE, at least one. And that's what I just said. You could have struggled. Listen, you could have just struggled with the hurricane, that one thing, but it stayed with you. And there were occurrences that stayed with you. So at least one. So the more trauma, of course, the more pain and the more you're at risk mentally. And I'm going to actually mentally and physically, because we all know that your mental health can contribute to your physical health and vice versa. And so we have to, make sure that we're on top of these things. So there's a quiz. There's a quiz. It's the ACE quiz. And they and it asks you 10 questions, and you answer the 10 questions, and then you add them up and get your score. And that's an indication. It's definitely not a diagnosis. It's an indication that you are struggling because of ACEs. I'll tell you guys a couple of them. Did a parent or other adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, humiliate you? Did a parent or other adult in the household push you, grab you, slap you? Did you often feel you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you? Let me go to another one. Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Did a household member go to prison? Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Was your mother or stepmother often, physically abusive and emotionally abusive? So there's 10 questions. And of course, I took the test and I got an 8 out of 10. And so I went to, just going through all of my notes and then trying to see what they say about these high, that, when your number is very high. But it really just indicates that you have lived through trauma, and that is probably contributing to your mental illness. And it even changes the care that you get. Now, trauma informed care, trauma therapy is different from regular therapy. There are people that are trained to deal with people that are, struggling with trauma issues. The psychologists, I'm sorry, therapists. So this is a step towards that. I got an 8, so that means that I need to be talking to a therapist that knows how to deal with trauma, knows how to deal with trauma, and knows how to deal with how I'm going to react to talking about the trauma. There's a mode, a type of therapy called EMDR, and that is used a lot um, in working with people that have had traumatic experiences and PTSD. And it's but it's something that has to be watched. You have to be watched. If you start digging up these bones and uncovering things, that it takes a lot out of you. And so you have to be watched, because it can have a negative effect and cause you to do something harmful. So 8 out of 10 for me. I'm gonna, on the show notes afterwards, I'm going to put the quiz in the notes so that you can take the test yourself. And again, if you think that you are struggling with any of this stuff, then maybe it's time to start talking to somebody, because I there are things that happened to me when I was younger that I don't remember. And there are some things that I just flat out don't remember. And there are some things that I remember that it happened to me, but I don't remember who did it to me. Or I remember a person being involved in a traumatic experience, but I don't remember the actual experience. That makes sense. And but you always know, you know, I always knew based on how I reacted in certain situations, male female relationships, that there was that something happened. And I'm not going to talk about that because I'll start crying, but I always felt in my heart like this is this is not how you're supposed to feel. This is not normal, you know, and so it took years and years, and I finally remembered the experience, and that sent me into a spiral. It really did. But I don't remember the people involved in the experience, and that's bugging the shit out of me, you know. And I'm over 50, and this is something that happened 50 years ago, probably started 50 years ago. And so I'm proof that it builds up, it stays in your body, it stays in your mind. And there are millions that have the ability to speak it and let it go. And then there are millions of us that don't know how to do that. There's millions of us that are looking for an answer to why. Why did my parents beat on me? Why? Why are you drinking so much? And then you're coming in here and you're being violent when you know that it's wrong. And I know when you see people, like if you've seen someone, I'm going to use the man as an example because that's what I saw. But a man will come in and he's really, really drunk and he's mean to his family. But then the next morning, he's so apologetic about it. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, if you know that you was wrong, why do it again the next night? you know, that's addiction for you. So it's it's a touchy subject. The childhood experiences, it's a touchy subject. Trauma therapy, trauma informed care, all of that is, and this all started blowing up. And I want to say in the last 10 years, you saw the psych world talking more about trauma and trauma therapy and the different types of trauma therapy. Because I know when I first had my breakdown in 2006, well, the first one in 2005, they didn't, that's not something that was thought of. They just wanted to find a way to medicate it and make it stop. And they didn't, you know, and so they never knew that there was 8 out of 10 things that shaped me into the depressed, traumatic person that I am today. So it's important. We hear these terms, adverse childhood experience, triggers, you know, that's another thing. Everybody says trigger now, but you know, there could be something that you go to somebody's house and someone in their house takes a drink, or you go out to a bar and there are people there that are, overly, overly drunk. And that will trigger memories of what you had to endure because someone was an alcoholic. You could be, you can go on a date and it could be somebody that you just met, or it could be somebody that you've known forever. But this one day, if they touch you, that's going to trigger something. or if they look like the person that was involved in your experience, that's going to trigger you. This whole trial thing, like I talked about in the beginning, and I'm not going to say his name because I hate him, but the whole trial thing, that is, I can't imagine the people that are going through it, that have to testify and talk about their experiences. And then the people that are on the outside looking in. And it's all to me, this is just my opinion. When I hear trial, I just think of the sexual abuse and the violence, the physical violence, right? So if I see a snippet that says that he beat so and so, that can trigger me back to my experience with witnessing domestic violence. And it doesn't have to be anything, big. You could be triggered at any moment by anything. You could be sitting down eating dinner. It's like grief. You know what I'm saying? Grief is a bastard because grief shows up when it feels like it, right? So we could be out having a wonderful dinner, and I will see someone that has on my grandpa's favorite color. Or I go on TikTok and there's a girl on there that looks exactly like my sister. So I have to, rush through her pages. Some days I have to rush through her pages. And some days I just look at her like, oh, so it's like grief. The trigger could be anything, it could come up anytime, and it could floor you at any given moment. And so that's why it's important to identify what is going on and try to get some help for it. Try to separate it and throw it away. I guess that's a good way to do it. I wanted to tell you guys about some of the physical effects that ACE can have on you. Heart problems, breathing problems. Like we said in the beginning, a little while ago, your environment contributes to that, to the heart disease, but you're also going. What also contributes to it is if you're in an environment that does not have the money for health care, that means that you're not going to take care of your health. So if your environment is fucked up and you're in an area that they don't have quality health care, then that means that you're going to get shitty service and you're going to struggle with this. And of course, we know, like I said, mental illness can trigger physical illness. Well, physical illness will trigger mental illness. Think about someone that has a chronic illness and they are limited in what they can participate in. That's depression, you know? So never ever think that your body and your mind are separate when it comes to these things because it takes a toll on your whole body. You know, one of the things that I've learned is that people that have people that have experienced trauma, um, they live in fight or flight mode. And I don't know if everybody knows what fight or flight mode is. If something is happening, the person will either stay there and deal with it or they'll just run from it. And it could be literal, you know, you could actually be somewhere and have fight or flight, or internally, your mental fight or flight or fight. And Black people, they say, walk around with intense in fight or flight mode, constant PTSD, constant fear, you know, because of the discrimination and the racism and just all of the things that are going around, you know. So we walk down the street, there are ticking time bombs walking down the street carrying this pain. And it's it's sad that that's something that we probably won't see change in our lifetime, but this is an example of how devastating racism and discrimination, number one, is, and how it affects us. Because, you know, when they say get over it, no, we can't get over it because we're still living with it. So we can't get over it. And yeah, so we need to talk more about this in our communities. We need to face it head on. There needs to be more resources tailored to racism and discrimination and the trauma that people deal with because it is ongoing. I always say that we have 400 and plus years of PTSD in our bodies, and that is a lot, and that will take you down mentally and physically. So I want you to pay attention if to your if you are a parent and you have children from 0 to 17, I want you to pay attention to their actions. If they're having nightmares, they can't sleep, wetting the bed, if they're scared of people, if they're having problems in school, if they don't show affection, and they may have shown it before, then something is going on. And it may not be major, but you have to take the step to find out why. Um, it's it's important. I don't want to beat this into your brain, but it's so important for us to take control of these babies. And we can't fix them, but we can help them, you know, have a better life. And so if you have the ability to help your child or a child in your world, then I would hope that you would take the time to help, you know, get help for them. I didn't have that option, you know. At 16, my doctor told me I had an ulcer from the things that were going on in my house. And there was nobody to say, well, let's go get this checked out. Let's go to the specialist. Nobody. And so if you have that ability and you have that relationship with your children or a baby in your world, please take the time to stop. Take the time to listen to them. Take the time to look at how they deal with certain people. So if you're in a group setting, say a family event, and someone comes over to hug your child and they move away or cry or change, you know, they get tense, then you want to ask what it is about that person that makes your child act that way, you know? And I know that it's terrifying to think that something could have happened to your child on your watch, but it does, and it's not our fault. We just have to make sure that we help our babies fix it and be better and find some happiness. So pay attention. Showing the school, paying attention in school, different difficulty learning, it could be different. I know, like my baby brother was always doing something in school, getting into trouble in school. So then that meant that he wasn't going to do as well as he could in some cases, and he's brilliant. So they already knew that he was brilliant, but because of different things that were going on, he's acting out. I stopped speaking when I was younger. I didn't talk to anybody. So I went through second grade barely talking to my teacher because of ACEs. So make sure that you're paying attention to your children and the children around you. Number two, make sure that you're paying attention to yourself. And if you know that you've had some of these experiences in the past and that it is harming you today, then take the steps to heal yourself. Talk to somebody. Everything is not medication, so you don't have to worry about that. You could just find a therapist that, and it could be a regular therapist or a therapist that specializes in trauma therapy and treatments, because we have to find a way to stick around. So I hope you guys learned something today. I feel like the teacher. I hope that this was helpful for someone, at least one person. If you're listening and this sounds like something that you're dealing with, share it, talk about it, send the episode to someone, and then you guys sit down and discuss it. Say your mom and dad, and mom listens to the episode. Then you're going to send it to your dad, and then that way you guys will have something tangible to start the conversation with your child. Share. The only way, and I'm not a numbers person. I don't pay attention to numbers and amount of listeners or whatever. I say share because this is information that we are not always privy to in Black communities. And so sharing these episodes with this information can save someone's life. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. Share. You can go and leave a review. You can also reach out to me and let me know if there is a subject that you would like for me to bring up on the show. I am open to suggestions. There are so many things out there that I know that I haven't touched on yet. So if you have something that you would like for me to deal with, then you let me know. Thank you guys so much. Stay peaceful as you can and just be kind. And remember that there are time bombs walking around the street and you could trigger them at any time. So just be kind to everyone. Take care, guys. Bye.